In this video, we're taking a look at the concept of business rules in Master Data Services for SQL Server 2008 ARC2. And as you see, I'm on the Explorer page here, or the main page for MDS. And first off, let's go in and take a look at a rule I want to create. So I'm going to go into the Explorer functions, and I'm going to take a look at the entity partner. And as you see, as we come across down here, if I move, I've got the general information on up, and we'll slide on through. And on across here, and you'll note that here for telephone numbers, some of the partners are blanks. We like to be able to talk to our partners every once in a while, so we need a telephone number in there, or else we're going to say that this member is not valid. So I'm going to switch on over and create that rule. Again, I'm going to go home. And now I'm going to create rules from System Administration function. So I'll click on that, and if I manage up in here, I'm going to come down and select Business Rules. Business Rule Maintenance page is open, and as you see, I select my model, the entity within that model, and the type of entity I have, whether it be a leaf or consolidated. And then the attribute, I can go down and pick an individual attribute, such as if I go down and pick telephone. You'll see right now there are no business rules that apply to the telephone. So let's go on back and go into all. And as we're in here, let's take a look at some of these rules that we have. I've got 3 of them down here right now. One of them's waiting for deletion. One of them's activation pending down in here, and one of them's active. What that means, deletion's obvious. Activation pending, if I select the business rule by clicking in the row down here, I can come through and I can select publish. Again, my 4 icons, this is a new, this is a delete, this is an edit with all these tools, and then this here down here is a publish. And if I select publish, I'll get a do you have any idea what you're doing? And of course the answer is no, but I'm going to say okay anyway. And of course I threw an error down in here, which is why I haven't published this one in the past. There is something wrong with that rule, but if there wasn't, she would come through and give me that. And let me delete that while we're on out. And I'll publish the next rule so you can see it actually working, we hope. By the way, let's go in and edit a rule while we're in here. So I'm now in the rule generation, and this is perhaps not the friendliest thing you ever worked with. Rules down here are if-then statements, and they're not case statements. They're not if-then-else statements. They're not nested if statements. They're just an if-then. Okay. So we'll come through, and if I wanted to edit something in here, by the way, as I drop on down, if I select KPI, I get the refresh, but now my edit action comes available. So my then statement defaults to, and what this tells me, for my KPIs down here, my if condition, that I want a default value of 250 down here for a KPI. So let's go through and create an actual rule for that telephone. So I'm going to come through and I'm going to add it. It's going to come through, and you can notice rules have priorities, which I can change as we drop on down here. This always reminds me of the old spaghetti code days. So I'm going to call this check for phone. Clever. And I, of course, would normally go in there and put a description in, but you know what it is. The name is descriptive. So we'll edit the phone, edit it down here. And now I'm going to come through and here's my components section. If I expand out my logical operators, I've got my ands and my ors. All right. Now I'm going to minimize this. If I expand out my conditions, value comparison, and have all the value comparisons that you're used to seeing. So I'm going to just move on through there. Now, don't let this confuse you. I'm going to come through and I'm going to select actions. Now, then I'm going to, this is an implied if, and I'm going to say defaults to, all right, or here's my validation. I could come down here and I can do a change. I can also come through and say a validation. If you were asleep, what validation does is it takes the members and the attributes and applies any business rules to them. Business rules that fail will make the attribute or the member invalid. Therefore, it would not be published on out for a subscribing system. This is one of the powers and one of the things you absolutely want to implement here with Master Data Services. You could also implement it in SSIS. You know, there's pros and cons of both. But let's come down here and we're going to come back on up. And we're going to say default. We're going to come down here and say, here we're going to do an is required. And I'm going to drop it down here on the actions. It is required. I must have a phone. But we don't know what attribute. Then we go into this edit action down here, and remember we wanted a telephone. By the way, see my domain attributes as I expand them on out. You're going to get this refresh every time you click on something. It's pagination. So now I expanded country, and I can drag that different attribute on over. But we want telephone, so we're going to drag telephone over here, and I dropped it. And again, she moves on down. Telephone is required. All right. Now I'm going to save the rule. All right. Whenever you're working down here in this rule page down here, for everything you do, every action you create, go through and save it. Don't do multiple actions and save. It'll error out on you every time. So now we'll come back on over, and I've got to check for phone, and now my activation is pending. Let's go through and activate that. So we'll publish the rule. Okay. And check for phone is now active, and those that were giving me a problem are gone. So let's go through and see if we can implement these rules. So now I'm going to go home again. I'm going to go into version management. And this is the version I was working with, if you remember down here. And now I'm going to go in here to validate version, and I'll tell it to validate. And I'm sure okay. Now while it's validating, I'll pause for a second to let that happen. Okay, validation has completed. Now I've got my validation summary, and if I drop down here like this, 777 succeeded, 6 failed. Here's your validation issues. So we come down and select that and click on through there. Notification status. So I was sent an email. Down here, actually, I put in a fake email so I wouldn't get all these email notifications. So I've got that. No description down here. The member type is leaf. And there's the member code, entity name. And let's go in and take a look at it. I went over into the Explorer function. And here, you see that my validation has failed down there because I have no phone number down there. If I went back in and did general information, I'll let her come back up. Now I can come through there and see that I've got no phone number, so my validation failed. So now this would give me the opportunity now, because I have very few of these, to come in here and edit the member and go in and add a phone. If I had more than a few dozen, it would be much easier just to go through and create a flat file or create something in Excel, and then to import that into the data and update it at that time. Again, let's go back over real quick, and let's go into the views, or let's go home, and we'll go into system administration, and we're going to manage the business rules. And here's that business rule I had down here again. So we come on through, and I can create these business rules and get fairly granular in them. Be real careful on your business rules to make sure that you save and you check and go back and forth, because this is perhaps not the friendliest tool that you've ever used.